Rainbow walked a grassy path. It was day, though Rainbow saw no sun, only the pale blue sky. A thick fog covered the land, preventing her from seeing very far. She didn't know how she got here or where she was traveling. She thought about flying, but something pushed her against her wings. It wasn't powerful, but it would be too taxing to open them fully, so she decided to keep them pinned to her sides. As she walked, a putrid waft of wind waved past her. Rainbow froze, gagging on the smell. What is that? She thought aloud. She slowly began walking towards the smell, which grew in potency. Finally, something came into her field of view. A bloody rib cage. Every part of Rainbow's mind told her not to go any closer, but her body moved anyway. Soon, the rest of the body came into view. All of its flesh and muscle withered away, leaving a bloody skeleton full of guts and entrails. The skull appeared to have been bashed open, a still mostly intact brain showing through a hole. Flies swarmed the body, feasting on whatever remained. Then Rainbow's eyes shifted down and saw that, hidden in the grass, was the same doll she saw at the dinner party. It lay there, lifelessly. Rainbow hesitantly took a step back. The blue sky faded into a sea of black abyss. Rainbow turned, looking back behind herself, seeing a door had appeared behind her, along with an endless black wall. Etched into the door was Discord's name written backward. Gulping, Rainbow put a shaky hoof to the door's handle, pushing the door open. After she entered, the door slammed shut behind her, causing her to jump. Soon a light flickered on, acting like a spotlight to the scene before her. The body from before was now lying in the center of the room. Unlike before, however, it still had most of its flesh and yellow fur, but 3 other ponies made their presence evident as they walked into view. There in the room with Rainbow were Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo. All 3 fillies wore a sick, mocking grin on their face. I don't know, Apple Bloom. I mean, he said to leave it alone. Scootaloo reminded. Ah, come on, Apple Bloom whined. Haven't you ever wondered what she tastes like? Maybe she tastes like chicken, Sweetie Belle suggested. Only one way to find out. Scoot, can you do the honors? Fine. Scootaloo accepted, pulling a knife out of thin air. Scootaloo jabbed the knife into the lifeless body, spewing blood onto herself. In response, Sweetie Belle giggled. Ew! Scootaloo complained, still smiling a toothy grin. Gross! Here, let me help, Apple Bloom offered. She gingerly pushed Scootaloo aside, sticking her forelegs into the body. Now, the key is to use a firm grip to pull out its goods. With a small grunt, she pulled out a mess of blood-soaked organs. There. Ooh. Sweetie Belle cooed at the gruesome sight. Mind if I try the heart? Sure, Apple Bloom said, tossing the heart to Sweetie Belle. Sweetie Belle cracked open her jaw and ripped into the heart, spewing blood into her mane. Sweetie Belle hummed in delight as she swallowed the chunk of heart. Oh, and can I have a bite of the liver? I love liver, Scootaloo asked. The 3 foals were soon digging into the corpse as if their life depended on it, and the light faded above them. Rainbow dared to turn back to the door. Now the door had Discord's name etched in the correct direction, though now small bits of blood spatter stained the lower left corner. Worst of all, however, was the foul smell emanating from the door. Rainbow gagged once again, feeling her stomach churn. It was far worse than the earlier smell. It smelled as if meat had been rotted for weeks on end, or maybe even months. Retching, Rainbow turned the doorknob and pulled the door open. A familiar sight could be seen as stairs led down to a grassy floor, and in the distance was the giant mansion. Slowly, Rainbow descended the stairs, being sure to look out for the source of the odor. Eventually, after what felt like ages, she made it to the door of the mansion. Despite what Rainbow believed, the smell had gotten even worse. It was as if 1,000 rotting corpses were behind that door. She exhaled and lifted her hoof to the doorknob. "Here we go," she breathed. She pushed the door open to see a long hallway shrouded in darkness, with a door at the other end. Webs covered the hall, but no corpses were present. There were no turns and no other doors, meaning there was only one way to go: forward. Placing a hoof on the wooden floor, Rainbow felt a sudden jutting pain in her head, causing her to grunt. "Gotta get through this," she reminded. Step after step, Rainbow felt jolts of pain. What was causing this? And moreover, what was behind that door? Nearing the end of the hallway, Rainbow finally noticed the red streaks on the floorboards. They seemed to smear in the direction of the door. She also noted that the wallpaper seemed to have long, wide scratch marks. There was no doubt in her mind that this was the room the smell was emanating from. Readying herself for the smell, she pushed open the door. Inside was a table with the hoof-made doll of Fluttershy sitting on it. The room was hazy and dark, the only light coming from straight above the doll. "Well," a deep, echoed voice boomed. "You certainly have made quite the show this week, haven't you?" The doll was utterly motionless, yet it began crying soft, echoed sobs. "Discord, why are you doing this?" "I told you to stay in the house," the deep voice scolded. "But you just had to run away, didn't you? And after all I've given you..." "Why are you hurting me?" "Quiet!" Suddenly, a knife flew from the darkness, impaling the doll in its chest. Blood spewed from the doll, hitting the wooden table it sat on. The voice sighed before continuing. "If you had just obeyed me, I wouldn't have to ask those fillies to take care of you. You would have been whole. But instead, you ran away, even without a word. I hope you're happy." The doll continued to cry for a moment before murmuring, "I miss my old life." "Come again?" the voice hissed. "I said, I miss when you weren't torturing me with those scary images. I miss when you wouldn't hit me or punch me or cut me open or turn me into some freaky doll. I hate you." As soon as the doll finished, the floor broke under Rainbow. She quickly grabbed hold of the surrounding floor, her heart pumping out adrenaline a mile a minute. Her left forehoof slipped off the blood on the floor, and before she could grab hold of another part of the floor, her other hoof slipped as well, causing her to plummet into the seemingly endless void below her. Rainbow's head jolted up as she woke, gasping for air. A regal sheet covered her body, a pillow just a few inches from her head. Turning to her side, she saw her girlfriend sleeping softly. Peering beyond Applejack, she saw her girlfriend's hat lying on a chair near the window. Artificial moonlight shined through the thin white curtains, landing on the hat. As she glanced over her surroundings, her memory slowly came back to her. She had stormed out of the dining room, angry at Discord's toying, and stormed up to her shared room. She had gone to bed shortly thereafter. Then, as she began to think about the doll, the vivid imagery from her dream came back to her. The memory of finding Fluttershy's ransacked body, the Crusaders munching on Fluttershy's organs. And then, there was the last thing she observed, where Fluttershy found herself as a doll. She was about to blow the whole thing off as a nightmare when she glanced down at her hooves. Rainbow yelped, realizing her hooves were still covered in the deep crimson she walked on. Grumbling, Applejack shuffled in the bed. "Rainbow?" she asked groggily. Rainbow noticed a sudden echo had held to her voice, unsettling her. "Something wrong?" Rainbow watched as her girlfriend turned to her, only to freeze once her face was in view. Instead of seeing the beautiful emerald eyes Rainbow was so used to, she saw two large buttons. Blood oozed from around them, dripping down to a sewn-shut mouth. "Rainbow?" Rainbow bolted out of the bed, now noticing the large blood stains on the sheets. She fell to the floor, her heart pounding. "Oops. Didn't mean to scare you." Applejack laughed. As Applejack's fabric hoof pulled her a bit closer, Rainbow's muscles tensed and she let out a blood-curdling scream. Applejack had flinched at the noise, giving Rainbow a chance she needed. She bolted to the hallway, no doubt breaking the door to their room. Immediately, she began rapping on Twilight's door. "Help! Help!" she cried, her hooves beginning to wear out. Finally, the door creaked open. "Rainbow? Is something wrong?" Rainbow's eyes locked with what were now deep purple buttons. She gasped and turned, seeing Applejack standing in the doorway to their room. She screamed yet again, bolting away from the two into a long, empty hallway. "Rainbow, wait! Slow down!" Looking back as she ran, she saw the two now dolls chasing after her. Their steps were weightless, their hooves making a sound akin to dropping a pillow on the floor. Rainbow turned a corner, nearly slipping as she galloped away. Looking down the hall, she saw a pink mare staring at one of the few paintings in the home. Rainbow gasped. "Pinky! Pinky! Help! Pinky! Pinky!" she shrieked. She dove to Pinky's hooves, clenching them tightly in her grasp. They felt oddly soft, as if the mare's innards were made of cotton. Rainbow looked up at Pinky's face, seeing two blue buttons where her eyes should have been. Without hesitation, Rainbow pushed herself away, scrambling to her hooves. The soft pitter-patter of the other two dolls was nearing her. She turned back around to face the dolls and readied her wings. In a blink of an eye, she took off, cutting through the frigid air. The dolls that were chasing her froze in their tracks. Rainbow collided with the two, sending both the dolls and herself tumbling to the floor. Despite the dolls' soft appearance, Rainbow found that they were quite dense. But the question as to why could wait. Rainbow pushed herself up, groaning, and began fleeing away. She glanced back, seeing the two dolls struggling to stand, and let out a breath. However, when she turned her attention forward again, she saw yet another doll. This one resembled Rarity, even wearing the face mask and silky robe Rarity often slept in. Rainbow was ready for another impact, but thankfully, the doll ducked as she flew over its head. She landed on the ground, giving her wings a break, and began running on hoof once again. At the very end of the hall, she saw the stairwell that led to the first floor. "Thanks, Celestia," Rainbow muttered, sighing. She entered the stairwell, nearly tripping on the stairs as she descended. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, Rainbow froze. The door had giant rusted chains wrapped around the door handles, a big lock dangling in the middle of them. Her blood ran cold, and she began hearing the soft hoof steps of the dolls behind her. She leaped for the chains, yanking them in hopes of them being loose. They didn't budge. The dolls were approaching, and from the sound of it, from multiple angles. She had no time to waste on these chains. She turned towards the hallway that led to the dining room. Just as the dolls reached the bottom, she ran into the hall.
"Rainbow, stop!"
The door to the dining room was ever closer. She knew there was no escape, but she had to try. Maybe she could hide under the dining table or behind a curtain. Or maybe she could trick them into going outside and then find a way to lock them in there. She reached the door and pulled on the handle. It too had been locked, though this time without a chain. "No, no!" she cried. This can't be happening. I'm trapped." The soft hoof steps slowed, and Rainbow turned, pushing herself as far away as she could. The dolls inched closer, a new doll joining them, leading them. However, it wasn't a doll. It was Discord. Wait! Don't do this!" Rainbow begged. He inched forward, holding up a needle with his talons and a spool of yarn in his paw. Tears poured down Rainbow's face like a waterfall. "Please, let me go! I don't want to be turned into a doll!" Discord just smiled, inching the needle closer. Rainbow shielded her eyes with a foreleg and clenched them shut. A moment went by before she felt the cold needle push into her skin. She flinched as it sank deeper and deeper. Her head began to feel light, and she felt her consciousness fading rapidly. Taking in one final shuddering breath, she collapsed to the floor. The warm sun shined down on the old dirt road. Leaves rustled in the calm summer breeze, birds chirped, bees buzzed, and not one cloud was in the sky. Applejack didn't care. She slowly strolled down the path, dragging her hooves in the dirt. She wore a brown canvas saddlebag and a frown on her face. Her mane was disheveled, and her eyes were a light pink. She felt as though she could pass out right then and there. No, she reminded herself. Gotta get home first. As she approached the old farmhouse, she saw Apple Bloom playing with Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo. "Tag!" Sweetie Belle shouted. "You're it!" What? Again? Scootaloo asked, eyeing Apple Bloom. Giggling, Apple Bloom said, "Can't catch me." She took off, running away from the two. Sweetie Belle quickly followed, and after a quick pause, Scootaloo chased after her. Applejack gritted her teeth as she glared over. Biting back the urge to shout at the three, she continued up to the porch. she saw Big Mac and Sugar Belle napping on the swinging bench, holding each other in their forelegs and smiling sweetly. Shaking her head, Applejack opened the front door, it creaking in response. She could smell Granny Smith preparing a breakfast for lunch. Should I? No. Gotta get this done first, she thought, glancing at her saddlebag. Applejack climbed the rickety stairs, a few moans coming from the floorboards. Once she made it to the second-floor hallway, she noticed a bunch of words had been scrawled onto the green wallpaper with a black marker. They're watching me, one informed. My friends are gone, cried another. Why haven't they done it yet? A third wondered. Guess she's been busy. Sighing, Applejack put a hoof to the door handle and pushed. As she entered, she flicked on the light. She saw Rainbow, sitting at a window, violently shaking as she stared out into the sky above. Hi, Sugar Cube, Applejack greeted. Rainbow didn't turn around. I, came to give you your meds. You feeling all right? Applejack asked, gulping down a lump in her throat. Dolls, she muttered. Everywhere. Dolls. Dolls. Every pony's a doll. Every pony. They're watching me, waiting for me to give in. I can't give in. I can't. Rainbow got onto her hooves, turning around. She gasped. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Please, don't hurt me. Rainbow begged. I don't want to be a doll. Fresh tears began rolling down Applejack's freckled cheeks. This wasn't unfamiliar to her, yet it always pulled at her heartstrings. Pulling a fresh syringe from her saddlebag, she took a step forward. Stay back, please, Rainbow begged, taking a step backward in response. I'll do anything. Please, just let me go. Rainbow's pinprick pupils locked onto the syringe. No. Trembling, she took another step backward. In lockstep, Applejack moved forward. I promise. It'll all be over soon. Applejack choked, sniffling. Stay still, Dash. With that, she leaped forward, tackling Rainbow so she couldn't run away. Rainbow flailed about, desperate to escape. Let me go! Please! Please! She shrieked, her muscles failing to pull herself away. Applejack plunged the needle into Rainbow, holding it as still as possible. Slowly, she pushed the plunger down, and the green liquid inside flowed into Rainbow. Grunting, she whined. No. Her flailing limbs became sluggish, her eyes became heavy, and her mind slowly lost consciousness. Applejack pulled Rainbow into a hug, feeling her girlfriend's now soft breathing brush through her mane. I'm sorry, Dash, she cried, tightening the hug. I'm so sorry. Tears rolled down Rainbow's back as she buried her head into her girlfriend's mane. Choking back her sobs, she whispered, Sleep tight, Rainbow. I love you.